Hello, thanks for joining me. My name is Jonetta Jackson. I'm a graduate student at Salem College. I will be briefly talking about the American College Test. Most four-year colleges and universities require the Scholastic Aptitude Test or the American College Test. In Winston-Salem for South County schools, every March, juniors take the ACT, which measures high school students' general educational development and measures their ability to complete college level work. The test measures what students have learned in their courses and measure their skills in English, math, science, and reading. The scores from these four courses are averaged to get a composite score of 1 to 36. I will discuss some studies and present their findings in my presentation from the 7 articles that I researched. What is ACT? It is a national college admissions exam that includes 215 multiple choice questions. It takes 3 hours and 30 minutes to complete. Optional ACT writing test is 40 minutes long and includes 1 essay and is always the last section of the test. If a student used the ACT as their college admissions test, the writing part is not optional. The ACT is offered 4 to 6 times a year, depending on the state. The test can be also taken in other countries. However, availability is much lower than in the United States. The purpose of ACT. It is administered by the ACT program, which is a comprehensive system for collecting and reporting information about students planning to enter college or a university. The purpose of my presentation today is to present various benefits and trends about the ACT that will be helpful to me as a high school counselor in the Winston-Salem for South County schools, or working as a counselor in other school systems where a large number of students take the ACT. Benefits and trends of ACT. Most academic programs use aptitude test scores as part of their admissions requirement. Admissions tests, sometimes referred to as an entrance exams or academic ability tests, are designed to predict performance in a particular educational program. ACT, in combination with other relevant information, as example of high school grade point average, teacher recommendations, and out-of-class accomplishments, are indicators for future academic success. How can high school counselors share an important role with ACT? School counselors must be prepared to administer ACT and interpret the results. According to ASCA National Model, advocates that school counselors are consultants in education. School counselors share strategies that support student achievement with parents, teachers, other educators, and community organizations. Now we'll talk about my research findings in my articles. Despite the growing emphasis on post-secondary education, high school students are generally unprepared for college. According to Dancola et al. 2015, in 2012, almost 1/3 of all students who took the ACT, one widely used indicator of college readiness, did not meet any college readiness benchmarks, and only 1/4 of students met all the benchmarks in one state unknown. The data from the ACT composite scores was used to investigate the relationships among school-wide academic performance, school size, minority school status, poverty school status, percentage of students with disabilities, and college readiness. According to Cutrona et al. 1994, they discussed the performance of all students on the ACT who had support from their parents versus who do not have that support. The scores obtained demonstrated students whose parents expressed beliefs in their competence and abilities more likely to perform well on the ACT and in college. Parents who shared the students' interests and concerns were more likely to perform well on the ACT and in college than those whose parents did not demonstrate. The results of this study suggest that findings are reliable, because of the scale ranges from 1 to 81 to 91 across a range of samples. Every year, millions of high school students across the United States take the ACT exams in preparation for college applications, and scores on these tests commonly play a significant role in admissions decisions, according to Kaiser et al. 2016. The authors use ACT to predict performance in females. Do not underpredict females' cognitive components. Females typically obtain higher subsequent scores on the ACT than males with the same admissions test. The results of this test predict females score conscientiously than males. Females work harder, take easier courses than males to obtain higher grades, meaning females have a desire to persevere to study than males. Females have better course-taking patterns. One of the misconceptions of the article is that ACT does not underpredict females' cognitive performance. Schwa and Wu performed a study in Missouri. They examined geographic variations of effects of ACT scores factors. They tested variables of school-level factors or indicators of providing quality education from administrators, teachers, and counselors in improving student learning outcome. It was determined that students will likely perform better on the ACT with these 5 significant variables in place: parent income and educational level of both parents, 2-parent family, student-teacher ratio, and teacher experience. According to procon.org, states that 2002 No Child Left Behind Act mandated annual testing in all 50 states. U.S. students slipped from being ranked 18th in the world in math in 2000 to 27th in 2012, with a similar decline in science and no change in reading. These assessments carry important consequences for students, teachers, and schools. Low scores can prevent a student from progressing to the next grade level or lead to teacher firing and school closures, while high scores ensure continued federal and local funding and are used to reward teachers and administrators with bonus payments. According to the U.S. News 2016, the latest scores from the ACT College Entry Exam suggest many of this year's high school graduates aren't ready for college-level coursework. It is reported that 38% of graduating seniors who took the exam hit the college-prepared benchmark in at least 3 of the 4 core subjects tested: reading, English, math, and science. That compares with 40% last year. The benchmark is designed to measure a strong readiness for college. According to this article, 64% of 2016 graduates took the ACT, meaning nearly 2.1 million students compared with 59% the year before. That increases the share of test takers who aren't necessarily college-bound. ACT appeared not to be reliable because 64% of the 2016 graduates took the ACT. That increases the share of test takers who aren't necessarily college-bound, unfair, and not reliable for students because the test doesn't show the true scores of students' ability. Stoneberg 2012 argues that ACT measures only a narrow segment of the skills needed to become an active citizen and possibly a leader who makes a positive, meaningful, and enduring difference to the world. One thing to remember, and that I learned, that prior to the standardized admissions test, college admissions, as least to schools of high prestige, was determined largely by socioeconomic status. So standard tests was designed to replace this fairly rigid social class system. It is to believe from the article that standardized college admissions tests assess only analytical skills as well as knowledge base on what they act and completely ignore creative and practical skills. The result of reliability and validity. I estimate that the test is not reliable because the students did not receive equality preparation for college, readiness due to high poverty school status and minority school status. In one of the articles, it was determined that high poverty schools had lower college readiness. I predict that students do not perform well on ACT because of low socioeconomic and minority poverty status. It is also determined that students will likely perform better on the ACT scores with these 5 significant variables as I spoke earlier: parent income, educational level, the 2-parent family, student-teacher ratio, and the teacher experience. The studies had testing limitations. When students do not receive equity support of education, performance scores will be low. Minority and poverty school status indicated that schools with larger proportions of students in low-income or racial ethnic minority groups were less likely to have academic performance, and students who were low income were less likely to comprehend college-level textbooks. It has been predicted that the students in certain geographical areas may or may not perform well on the ACT based on 2-parent home and parent educational level. The studies had strengths. In one of the articles, social school workers use strategies to advocate for structural changes to improve college readiness for students, and school social workers shared with parents and community leaders who may have resources to change such systematic inequalities. Parental social support promote reassurance of worth. Parental support provides social integration. Parental support provided nurturance and reliability. Relationships. There were some ethical factors. The test is equal for all genders. All students deserve to receive information and support, need to move forward. Self-discrimination, self-dependent, development, and affirmation within one group's identities. All students have the right to receive critical, timely information on college, career, and post-secondary options, and understand the full magnitude and meaning of how college and career readiness can have an impact on their educational course and future opportunities. In my conclusion, ACT is designed to draw on the content knowledge that the test takers have acquired in high school and to assess how well they can use and apply it. Students can benefit from helping professionals as school social workers. School social workers can prepare them for the admissions test for college. School counselors can teach students how to conduct a self-assessment, self-awareness about interest, achievement, and motivation to help them further plan their future. School counselors can collaborate with colleagues, parents, students about their standardized test results. Scores on assessment instruments are rarely totally consistent or error-free. In fact, all instruments are subject to some degree of error and fluctuations. Therefore, counselors must evaluate the evidence to determine whether an instrument results have an adequate degree of reliability, according to Dr. Spacco, 2016. Thank you for joining me. I do have books here that actually, these are practice books that students can actually check out to prepare themselves for the ACT. Thank you for watching.